Warning, Gory Storytime is a horror movie review show with a 13-year-old host. So, if you are not amused by the idea of a child describing R-rated graphic scenes of violence and death, or do not want movies from the 70s, 80s, and 90s spoiled, this may not be the show for you. Parental guidance is suggested.
Yeah, so guide your parents out of the room so we can have some fun.
Everyone has a birthday they'll always remember.
Can we open my presents now, Mommy? A good guy! I knew it! I'm Chucky.
He's something, isn't he?
This is Andy's.
Time for bed, Andy. Good night, baby.
Good night, Aunt Maggie. Good night, Chucky.
Everyone knows most accidents happen at home.
How did that happen?
This is no accident.
Andy!
I'm Detective Mike Norris, homicide.
Andy!
Miss Peterson's dead, Miss Barkley. She fell from the kitchen window.
Someone's moved in with the Barkley family. And so has terror.
Mommy, I know who was on the counter. Andy!
Who, Andy?
Chucky.
Nobody believes you about Chucky. He came alive in my hand.
Oh, for God's sake.
Why won't you believe?
Because I'm sane, Mrs. Barkley. Sane and rational.
No one believes the truth. Or lives to tell it. There's nothing nice about murder. And there's nothing innocent about child's play.
Well, let's start off
With facts?
Well, no, let's tell the basic story of Child's Play.
I don't know exactly how to explain it, but runaway prisoner, or,
No, he was the Lakeshore Strangler, I believe they called him.
and they were trying to catch him.
Yes, the police were chasing him.
Okay, and
His name was Charles Lee Ray, which
yes.
we'll get into later.
he was being chased by the sheriff or something like that.
A police officer.
Police officer, and ran down alleys shooting, and then broke into a toy store, got shot, used voodoo to put himself into the doll's body, and
You know, transferred his soul.
yep, and then everybody thought he was dead,
Obviously, his body wasn't working. So
right? And then everybody thought, well, there's no more Strangler. And then
cut to little boy Andy Barkley, who it was his birthday, and he really wanted this doll that was, based on a TV show he watched called The Good Guys. He had pajamas and all sorts of toys
they're
that
popular,
were, but he
like the
didn't
American
have.
Girl doll now.
Sure. They were definitely inspired by My Buddy dolls at the time. The look was very similar, and he wanted one really bad, and his mother, being a single mom, couldn't afford one, but found a guy selling one that, a homeless man was selling one, and she bought it cheap in an alleyway, and her son was very excited to get his very own good guy doll, which all came with their own names, and his happened to be named Chucky. And then, what would you say?
I would say
Things started happening?
yeah,
Like?
deaths.
A few.
People thinking the son was crazy for saying it was the doll, it wasn't him.
Well, twice he showed up at murder scenes, you know. His
With
Aunt
doll.
Maggie, I don't believe it was really his aunt. It was,
It
like
was someone
his mom's
that works
friend
with-
that babysat him.
Yeah.
And then one of the guys that was supposed to be the getaway guy for Charles Lee Ray ended up dead, and Andy showed up there, and nobody believed him when he said, you know, Chucky did it, because most people wouldn't believe that.
Yes, the little plastic unanimated doll would jump
Murder
off and
someone.
murder everybody.
Exactly. And then, you know, once people started believing him, you know, they
they
had
started-
to try to stop him. And
Yep.
they met the guy who taught Charles voodoo, and, well, they found out about him. He was already dead because Chucky
Halfway.
dealt with that.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, he was dying. All right. Let's,
Get into
without
facts.
getting into the ending or anything, let's do some facts. The one interesting fact is Chucky's full name is Charles Lee Ray. He was named after killers Charles Manson, Lee Harvey Oswald, and James Earl Ray, all real killers. So they just combined those three and gave him the name Charles Lee Ray. Do you remember what the original title was for this movie?
The original title was Batteries Not Included.
Absolutely.
They had to change the name, so a lawsuit wasn't at hand because Steven Spielberg was doing a movie also called Batteries Not Included. So
Which
they
was a
had to change
very
the
different
name.
movie. It was a comedy about an alien.
Yes, but still, like they had to do with the Airbender movie. The show was called Avatar, but they
Changed it because there was a movie called Avatar coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah, same basic idea, absolutely. The second title, though, they changed it to Blood Buddies. They changed that because it was too close to the My
Buddy.
Exactly. And
Which-
they were already, you know,
Supposed to be like the My Buddy,
yeah.
because they asked if they could use the My Buddy, and no, it's about murderer.
Well, you can see how a toy
Yes.
made for children, the company would say, no, please don't use that in our movie. So then they made one that was definitely similar in look. I mean, not this version, this was from The Bride of Chucky, but the original was very similar in look to the My
Yes.
Buddy dolls. And did you know that Catherine Hicks, who played the mom, Andy's mom, Karen, she didn't consider it a horror movie as she was filming it. She considered it a family film, a film about a family. Not that it was for
Son,
families.
mother, and a cop.
Yeah, trying to solve a crime, but she considered it more of a thriller than a horror. She tried to convince herself it wasn't horror. Chucky the doll was designed by a man named Kevin Yeager, who had just come off of doing some animatronic work for Nightmare on Elm Street 3.
3.
Yep.
Twin
And
Warriors.
they met on the set, fell in love, began dating, and the movie came out in '88. They were married in 1990 and are still currently married to this day and have I believe, one child together. A lot of people would remember Catherine Hicks from a TV show called Seventh Heaven, which came out much past this. She was, I believe, the mother on Seventh Heaven, about a family. I think the father was a pastor or something. Let's tell the story about Alex Vincent, who played Andy Barclay. I think Barkley, but it's spelled Barclay. But anyway, during the screen test, up to the point where I'll take over and you know which one that is, why don't you tell the story about what happened?
Yes. Alex, Vincent, they were practicing for their lines to see who could get into the movie or whatever.
Yeah, it was
He
screen
was
test.
practicing for that to get into the movie, and he kept getting to this one part that he kept saying, I forget the part, and
He just wouldn't say it.
Wouldn't say it, kept saying he forgot it.
And then when it came down to it, they kept reminding him what the script had said, and he finally broke down and said, I knew that, I just didn't want to say it, because the line that he was supposed to read was, Chucky says Aunt Maggie's a bitch and got what she deserved. And as a 6-year-old boy, he was actually 6 when they filmed this, he did not feel okay with saying that word. He felt that,
especially in front of his mother, probably.
now obviously she had signed off on it, she had seen what the script said, she was willing to let him say that, but as a 6-year-old who's told not to swear, being told to swear at all, he was like, I don't think I can say that. But he was so convincing when he told them that, he didn't know the line. That's when, they said to hire him, because they honestly thought that
he was like,
forgot the
this
line.
guy's a true actor. He made us believe that
Absolutely.
he kept forgetting, and he actually just didn't want to say it because it was a curse.
True. Alex Vincent had a younger sister. Why don't you tell the people about that?
Do we have her name?
No, it didn't mention it in the stuff
Okay.
that we looked up.
But Alex's younger sister, at the time, still younger, but Alex's sister was one of the few people that they had in a suit-like thing as Chucky. Costume like as Chucky.
Mm-hmm.
So in scenes where it was a little person, it wasn't always a midget, it was his sister or an animatronic
The very
robotic
first
thing.
The very first scene in Child's Play where Chucky is moving and you could tell it's not a puppet, it's someone in a suit, it was his sister. So while he was the human star of that movie, his sister was the very first on-screen, non-robotic, non-doll Chucky. Another interesting fact is Brad Dourif, who does the voice of Chucky and played Charles Lee Ray in, the live action version of himself.
And the voice throughout the movie.
Yep. He was only supposed to be Charles Lee Ray up until he went into the doll. They had done the whole movie with a different voice for Chucky. It was never going to be the same voice as Charles Lee Ray.
Right.
They decided it didn't sound good enough.
Right.
They thought it was too effeminate, is the nice way of putting it. That's not how they put it, but it sounded too effeminate. So they had Brad come in and do his voice as
Chucky.
He said it was hard because they had already filmed it and the mouth for Chucky was made to move to the other person's, speaking style. So he had to do the ADR, which is basically doing voiceover, and make sure it matched the other person's
voice style.
Voice patterns.
Yeah.
Brad Dourif has been in quite a few things. I'm not going to list them all because it's a long list. Some of the other things he's known for being in, he was in Halloween 2, the Rob Zombie version, not the original Halloween 2. He was in Lord of the Rings, Two Towers, and Return of the King. He was in an episode of Tales from the Crypt. He was in Critters 4, a movie that we watched recently called Body Parts. Remember when the guy had to have his got in the car accident? I didn't watch that with you. Maybe it was with Jen. I apologize. I thought you'd watched it with me, but he was an actor in that movie. I'll have to let you see that. He was in The Exorcist 3. It goes on and on. HBO had a series called Deadwood. He was on that.
Was he in the rest of the original 5 Chuckies and then this newer one?
Oh, he has always been the voice of Chucky.
Okay.
He has, and the one that was just released at the end of 2013, or towards the end, they actually got Alex Vincent to come back, which is interesting. I have yet to watch that, but I did buy the box set.
Did they get Catherine Hicks or no?
She has only been in part 1 and 3. I don't know that she was in the newest one, Curse of Chucky. I do know that they made a big deal that they got, the original Andy to come back. And one thing that you had mentioned in the car, speaking of toys that are alive, what was the connection you had made when we were discussing this movie with a child's movie that involves living toys?
Well, I was saying if I had my Woody toy from Toy Story, I would have brought that in just to say, look at the comparison. And the owner of that toy was also Andy.
Yep, he had Andy written on the bottom of his boot.
Which is ironic to me because...
Living toys, owner named Andy. It's kind of a weird coincidence.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick commercial break, as we do every time.
Usually.
And say that today's episode of Gory Storytime is brought to you by the Charles Lee Ray Daycare Center. The Charles Lee Ray Daycare Center has all the amenities you would wish for your child. A staff that is alive. A playroom full of toys that not only can your child play with, but will play with your child. And of course, lunch is provided. And the second sponsor would be?
And the My Little Forensic Kit. Solve violent murders like the pros with the My Little Forensic Kit. The kit includes magnifying glass, fingerprint testing set, DNA testing equipment, chalk for outlining bodies, and an HD digital camera for crime scene photos. Ages 5 and up. My Little Forensic Kit from the makers of My Little Urinalysis Kit.
All right. That's all right. Now, one thing that we like to talk about when we do these reviews is how many deaths were in this movie. Do you happen to remember how many we counted in this? And then we have to explain one thing.
Wasn't it 8?
No, it was 5.
It was 5.
Only 5 deaths. We did count Charles Lee Ray getting shot at the beginning, but we did not count Chucky being killed at the end. The way we did it with Nightmare on Elm Street was we didn't count when Freddy died at the end, but we did count in our review of Friday the 13th, Mrs. Voorhees being killed.
Because she doesn't come back in the others.
That was what we decided on, was
like
the
if the person
main
doesn't
killer,
come back.
if they come back in a sequel, we're not going to count that death in our death toll.
If they don't come back, they die.
Absolutely. So like if we did Scream, there's some people that since they never come back to life, it's not supernatural, we won't count, or we will count those people.
Yeah.
But that'll be for another episode.
Because the killer's a different person every time.
Well, again, that'll be for another episode.
Yeah.
Let's talk about our favorite scenes.
My favorite scene would have to be Chucky was in the fireplace and screaming and yelling and cursing at Andy's mother, and Andy struck a match and was about to throw it in, and Chucky said, "I thought we were friends to the end." And Andy looks down at him and says, "This is the end, buddy," and threw the match in, and he burst into flames.
That was a pretty good scene. My favorite scene would have to be when Andy had been basically put in a psychiatric ward, and his mother was just trying to believe him. She definitely didn't. She didn't believe that the doll came alive and killed anyone, but she wanted nothing more than to believe her son. So what she did was she was looking at Chucky and she's like, come on, be alive, and she's just yelling at it, and she just wanted some proof. And of course, Chucky stayed perfectly still. And she went and picked up the box and was looking at it, and batteries fell out. And she realized the batteries had never been in the whole time. So she picks up the doll and she's looking at it and she's like, opens the back and there's no batteries in it. And my favorite part was when Chucky's head spins around 180 degrees and goes, "Hi, I'm Chucky, wanna play?" Drops and rolls under the couch. Now, another interesting fact, Catherine Hicks, not really afraid of the doll that had, I believe they said 9 puppeteers,
Controlling it.
3 just controlling the face to have the eyebrows move and the mouth. So it was really hard to be afraid when you see a bunch of people under floorboards or behind things running controls, and you see all these wires hooked up to the robotic
But
doll.
like Indiana Jones,
She was afraid of snakes. So she would pretend that, like when she looked under the couch and she had to be afraid, she would pretend there was a snake under there, which would help her
Be
show
scared.
fear. Absolutely. So that would be my favorite scene. What would your least favorite scene be in this one?
my least favorite scene would have to be the one where Chucky found the guy that told him how to do the voodoo stuff. Wouldn't that be the witch doctor or something like that?
Or voodoo priest or whatever.
Voodoo priest. And he was breaking legs and limbs through the voodoo doll. And when he went to stab the doll with the knife, it didn't go through the foam
Oh, I guess I didn't know.
thing. It just went poof and like stayed on the outside of the.
I thought it looked like it stabbed in a little. I must have not been noticing as much.
And then all of a sudden there's a big gaping hole in the guy's chest and he's bleeding out. And I'm like, that's not, no.
Well, that's actually part of my least favorite scene also, but for a different reason. The idea that he knows voodoo and works voodoo dolls, why does he have to get up close and personal with any of the people he kills when he can just kill them through a voodoo doll? Logically, it doesn't make sense that he would have to be there. Maybe he liked the hands-on murdering because he was the Lakeshore Strangler.
Or maybe
so
he didn't know how to make the dolls themselves.
Well,
and
he did have the doll of the voodoo priest, but I believe
Because
it was
the
his
priest-
personal doll of himself.
yes, the priest tells everybody where he keeps his dolls. And I don't think he has a doll of everybody that lives in the
Chicago.
state.
I think it was Chicago. So, all right. Out of, our 5-star, 10 stars what we've been
10
going with.
star.
I don't know why I said 5. Out of our 10-star rating, where would you put Child's Play on your list?
I would have to say it would be a 9.
A 9. This is the highest rated one so far.
Yes.
You rate this above Freddy and...
Yes.
Wow.
Because all of the work they put into it and how it just was, it came out amazing. How they blew up the couch and stuff for the little person, and they had like a 30% bigger thing, and they did all this work.
The
and
set was 30% bigger when they had a
Little person.
And you don't have to do this every time you say that. I mean, that is the politically correct term.
Yes.
Of course, there's a comedian named Brad Williams that said that little person to him is more offensive than the word midget. This is unrelated to this, but he said because little person makes it sound like, well, you're not really a person, you're just a little person. He said that seems more condescending to him, but that is the politically correct term. But anyway, they did make the set
Yes.
30% bigger so that
Because
he would
then
appear
the same size.
size as Chucky. Absolutely.
Yep. And it was just all the work that they put into it. 9 puppeteers for the face, 12 altogether or whatever for everything else. So I think that was above and
So a
beyond.
9. This one I would rate an 8. I liked all of them, to be honest, except for The Seed of Chucky, and I haven't seen The Curse of Chucky. I want to. They said that it was back to horror and less comedy. Bride of Chucky, they really went out of their way to be
Funny
humorous.
and-
Yeah, which I don't mind. I mean, Freddy's always known for throwing out one-liners and stuff. I like that. But it sounds cool that they brought it back to let's just be horror and not be funny. Seed of Chucky, we'll never be reviewing because it's just bad. There's no reason for such a movie to exist. It was horrible.
It belongs on How Did This Get Made? So
Yes, which is a pretty good podcast that is unrelated to our show. So I don't know why you gave them a shit. No, I don't care. Shout them out, whatever. So is there any other things you want to mention about Child's Play?
not really, no.
No? I would say, did I give a rating? I think I started off and then...
Yeah, 8.
Yeah, 8. Okay. I lost track of my own thoughts.
Well,
So I guess that seems like another episode of Gory Story Time.
I was your host, Jason.
And I was his co-host, Craig, and
Sweet dreams.